Hello and welcome to another Pre-Chiro podcast episode. I'm your host, Dr. Ben Glass, and today we're making a professional chiropractic connection out in Scotland with Dr. Donald Francis. Dr. Donald, can you kind of just get us started by reflecting on where you were at in life when you decided to become a chiropractor and maybe what was unique about your background at that time?
Okay. Before I became a chiropractor, I was a soldier. I was in the British Army, and um, I suppose I actually loved the army until one day I didn't. And I remember that day very clearly, February 2004. And I woke up in the morning, and I said to my wife, I'm actually, for the first time in my life, or adult life at that time, I'm not happy. And as the universe would have it, my great friend, mentor, surrogate father phoned that evening and said, why are you still in the army? And I said, oh, I've got a pension and all this sort of stuff. And he said, well, I'll go back to my earlier story. You always wanted to be a chiropractor. Why don't you think about that? The next day I skipped into work like a little Bambi because I was so excited. It took a year or so from that point to be on the course. There's several reasons for that. I immediately went to Iraq. I was sent to Iraq this is long after the invasion, so this would have been May 2004, I suppose, for about 5 months. The whole time I was in Iraq, I was applying to Palmer, going through the Palmer applications process. Why Palmer? My mentor had been to Palmer. I confess I didn't look around too much. And so I went there. So that was where I was then. Just to quickly go back. So the first time I wanted to be a chiropractor was when I was about 15. Same mentor, same friend. I was born in Zimbabwe in Africa, and I arrived in the UK as a teenager. Went to spend Christmas with these lovely people, and they took me to their clinic and they adjusted me and showed me around, showed me around the clinic and explained it to me, told me the story, I suppose. And I immediately decided at that point I wanted to do it. But like a lot of young men, I also wanted to be a soldier. So I decided to scratch that itch first, went off to the army, and then actually really enjoyed the army and stayed way longer than I should have done. Applied to chiropractic college in 1997 when I was about 23, but I was going to go to a British college then, and I chickened out because it was going to cost money and stuff like that. Anyway, the long and the short of it is I went when I started chiropractic college when I was 32, and I had a wife and children and went to a foreign country, and it cost me way more. But I'm so glad that I did it because I make quite a lot of money now, enough to be able to give money back. And well, I never worked a day after chiropractic college because every day is just an absolute dream.
Mm. Can you talk about what it was about that mentor that really spoke to you, what he was doing, or what you observed as a 15-year-old that was like instantly the light went on that this was a great path for you? And then also, what was it that really attracted you to join in the Army at 17? Were you an athlete? Were you playing football or rugby? What was going on in your life at that moment that really delayed the possibility of you even becoming a chiropractor for such a long period of time? And then also reflect on what it was that brought you back to it at 32.
Okay. So, like a lot of people, I had been exposed to chiropractic almost all my life. I had my first chiropractic adjustment at 4 years old. Um, the irony here is I was given that adjustment by this mentor in Zimbabwe. It was called Rhodesia back then. And the reason why I was given that adjustment was because I kept getting tonsillitis, and they needed to get me healthy enough to take my tonsils out because I kept getting sick every time I went into hospital. So I went to the chiropractor to get adjusted to get healthy enough to have my tonsils out. I know, okay, I know. Anyway, one adjustment, I'm then healthy enough to get my tonsils removed. I have my tonsils removed, and unlike most of my patient family, now I then didn't get adjusted regularly. I got adjusted intermittently, like maybe school holidays or or something like that throughout my life. So I knew the power of chiropractic. I knew what it was capable of. I hadn't really thought about it as a career, but I guess when you're about 15, 16, people are starting to say to you, what are you going to do when you grow up? Like at 16, you think you're grown up, but you're really not. Your prefrontal cortex is not developed and so on. So you begin to start thinking. And this mentor was very charismatic. His name was Dr. John Howard. He was a Palmer grad. He's big in SOT world, which is where I did a lot of SOT, a chiropractic technique. And it's where I did a lot of my early chiropractic.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, he took me under his wing. My father had died when I was a child in a war we had in Rhodesia, and so I'd grown up in a wonderful, loving, single parent family with my brother. And so John took me under his wing, and he showed me. Sorry, that's my dog coming in to say hello. He took and he adjusted me, and he showed me around his clinic, and he talked about how every day he was going to work and changing people's lives, and they paid him to do it. And he hadn't advertised a day. He'd opened up, he'd hung his shingle on the door, and he hadn't advertised, and people had come. And I know there are plenty of people who advertise like hell, and for that story hasn't happened. But he had a full practice. Sorry, my dogs are going to go a little nuts. He had a full practice, and he said he never worked a day. And I agree with that. I've never worked a day. Every day I go to work. I call it work, but I go to chiropractic and I play, and I absolutely adore it. And I'm so pleased that I've done it. But that was what set me off. The army, like I said, my dad was killed in the Rhodesian Bush War, 1979. I was 6 years old. And I think my brother and I both had an itch that we needed to scratch. We'd been brought up in colonial Africa, and the military was part of our DNA to a certain extent. So at that age of 16, I was already on a path to becoming an officer. I hadn't passed any tests, but I'd certainly entered a pathway which was going to take me eventually to becoming an officer, which I did. I attended our officers academy at 19 and graduated from that at 20. It's our version of West Point, I suppose. Sandhurst is called. And I found I really enjoyed the army. And I think this will be familiar to you, but I got a bit scared, I suppose, of leaving the familiar, which was the army at that point, and going back into academia, getting into debt. And I understand that from everybody. We're all worried about getting into debt, but you can't make an omelet without breaking eggs. I borrowed money when I eventually went to college, borrowed quite a lot of money. Went to America. It was more expensive than it would have been had I gone to the UK at the time, or certainly would be now still. But I'm really glad I did it because it gave me a tremendous chiropractic foundation so that when I came into practice, I was able to be relatively successful quite quickly. And I paid the debts. I paid my student loan off inside 5 years. And, that was a great relief, I have to say. Because once, by that point, I would have been about 41 when I paid my student loan off. So quite late to gaining financial freedom. But I'm really glad I did it all because at the time it seemed painful, but in hindsight, and we have been quite successful in hindsight, it was the right thing. And the debt is not a debt, it's an investment. If you can think about it like that, that's a big difference.
Mm-hmm. Can you describe your student experience? You said you gravitated towards SOT. That was inspiration maybe from watching your mentor be getting clinical results. But can you talk about maybe you mentioned prefrontal cortex not having developed as a teenager? Maybe your passion is in communicating the neurology nowadays. Can you just talk about as a chiropractor, because we're all so unique in our own way, can you talk about your student experience and maybe how that grew after you graduated into you becoming a professional in certain unique ways of how you expressed your chiropractic?
Sure. So I think, in my experience, many people in the chiropractic profession often, regardless of whatever they're exposed to, often gravitate back to their sort of source, gravitate back to the person or the technique or the thing that got them juiced up in the first place. So my mentor was SOT. And when I went to chiropractic college, it was certainly my intention, almost certainly, to go and work for him. And I possibly would have done, except I live in Scotland now, and he was based in the south of England. And in American terms, that's not that far apart, maybe 5 or 6 hours drive. But in UK terms, it's a long way. And when we graduated, my wife's father was sick, and there was a little bit of pressure for us to go back to where she's from, back home. And I was 36. So the idea of taking an associateship, staying away from home for another 3 years before going back to set up wasn't appealing for all sorts of reasons. So I decided not to do that associateship and to open up straight on my own. And we could, if anybody would like to talk to me about that, I'm very happy to have that conversation. I think some people can do that. In America, it's much more common than it is in Europe. In Europe, it's almost unheard of. But I was 36. I had an entire career beforehand. So when I was at Palmer, SOT was an elective. That means that it wasn't part of the core curriculum, but we could take it. And I believe it still is an elective. I think Palmer particularly, and I don't know about Life West, Palmer's very strong and it's elective. So, I mean, I probably could have taken any one of about 20 different electives. In the end, I took SOT, Activator, and Atlas Orthogonal, which is an upper cervical specific technique. The Palmer core curriculum at the time was Toggle Recoil, which is an upper cervical. That means you just focus up here. The core curriculum was something called Gonstead, which is a full spine adjusting technique. And I really like Gonstead, actually. And we also did a lot of Thompson and Palmer diversified. So Thompson's the drop one where you're lying on a table and you have a clunk in the table that uses that mechanism. And the diversified is anything that's not within either of those other mentioned systems, but involves moving a bone, the sort of movement that might give you that crick sound. Anyway, I went to Palmer age 30, must be 31 and a half, almost 32 maybe. And I knew that I had a very finite of time. I was going to spend quite a lot of money to suck the place dry. For me, it wasn't a case of just getting through. It was a case of literally going to the fountainhead and putting my mouth on the fountain and just sucking as much as I could in that 3.5 years. And I really did. I don't want to sound like I'm boasting. I was valedictorian, but it wasn't so much because I'm really super smart. It was because I had to work smart. I mean, we had 2 kids and they were small and young. And, I just was super well organized and made sure that I did everything and did tons more. And I found that I've pretty much done that through most of my chiropractic career as well. Subsequently, I've done everything and tons more. But that's my personality. I like that. If I don't feel the weight of extreme pressure and deadlines on me, I'd wonder what the hell I was doing. In terms of neurology and the sort of cerebral understanding, I left university, I left chiropractic college with a lot of knowledge, very little experience. And I realized that much like passing your driving test, I was just licensed enough not to be dangerous. I knew enough to know how much I didn't know. And that really, it was when the rubber hit the road, so to speak, that I got into clinic, that the learning really started. And you start to see the effect that chiropractic has on the brain and how it changes lives, how it changes people, that it makes you very curious as to try and understand why you can do a certain thing in a body to a person and change the course of their life. I have my sort of one of my greatest aha moments was a young baby who'd screamed his whole life to 7 months old. His parents were at the end of their tether, so to speak, and one adjustment, and this child was placid and meek and slept. And it was those little light bulb moments that really began to light a fire in a way that school hadn't so much, because that was talking about the theory, the possibility. It was the practice. And it was when I suppose I really became a very vitalistic, straight, serious chiropractor when I began to see those tangible results so quickly that it, so the greatest teacher is always the one on the table, I think. I hope that helps.
Absolutely. Thank you for sharing those stories. So, as a professional, how have you really stayed engaged? How have you really stayed inspired? How have you directed your energy? I hear you saying that you were highly organized as a student. Maybe you got that in the military. I'm curious where you got that from, and just kind of how have you approached going into a country like Scotland that has basically very little to no presence of chiropractic, and or at least within your community that you settled down in, and just what was that experience like? Can you reflect on those times?
Sure. So in terms of being organized, I think to a certain extent, a certain amount of organization comes with maturity. Until you've been a parent, for example, you never truly understand the value of time. And whilst I was at Palmer, yes, being organized was important. It was also my second degree. I did a degree when I was in the army as an officer, and I approached both of those very much like a job. I didn't think, I approached it like I start at Palmer. BJ had this thing about being bright and breezy. So Palmer still, as far as I know, starts at 7:30 in the morning, which which is like being back in the military again. But I just organized my day that it started at 7:30, and my wife and I had an agreement that I would be home by 5 p.m. every day to help with feeding the kids and to do bath time and to put them to bed. And then after that, if I had, exams or tests or whatever, or just general studying, I sort of had between about 7 and 10, I suppose, to do that. And that was it. There wasn't any other time, and then obviously you have breaks and lunchtime and that sort of stuff at school, but you couldn't go outside that. We also, when I went to college, I had I mean, you can call them student loans, but it wasn't really a loan. I had put my house up on a mortgage to the bank, so if I failed, I was going to lose everything. It wasn't like it's quite a big, it's quite a big, it's a big motivator that you can't. And I had 2 kids and a wife. We'd given up everything. We'd given up a good career, a good job. So that was the organization there. In terms of coming over to Scotland, Scotland had a chiropractic presence, and we live in a reasonably rural area. And there were a couple of chiropractors here, good chiropractors, but just out of a very different philosophical base to me. They were more into treating conditions, which I probably did a little bit more when I started. That was more about my lack of certainty. When I may have been to Palmer and I may have done all the philosophy, but I really lacked certainty because I hadn't, I'd done my numbers in clinic and more, but I lacked that certainty. So the one thing I would say, that if I could go back and speak to my graduating self now, go back to my 36-year-old graduating self and say, I would firstly reassure him that everything's going to be okay. That, people need chiropractic much more than we need patients. I think a lot of chiropractors forget that. But I would say you've been taught everything you need. just have faith, confidence, and certainty, because I think I had to make more mistakes than I needed to get the confidence and certainty that I do now. I'm about to do a talk in my local town, and there'll be 150 people in that room tonight, of which 10 to 15 of them at least might be ex-patients. When I say ex-patients, I mean those from those early days when they tried this guy who lacked certainty and therefore didn't speak. I didn't speak congruently as I would do now. I'm really on message now, and it doesn't just mean, I live my chiropractic lifestyle. I know exactly what to expect from an adjustment, and I tell people, I've adjusted you. You go away and heal. And whereas at the time, when I didn't get the results that I thought I should or deserved to get based on the chiropractic, I took a lot of blame myself, regardless of what that patient was living. So I came to an area. I was quite busy quite quickly. It depends what busy means. In a sort of therapeutic sense, I got a lot of back pain patients quite quickly. I still do. I still get a lot of pain patients.
Mm-hmm.
But and I got a lot of patients from other chiropractors who thought they would just try the new guy and seeing if there was a little bit different. Not that they were. I mean, there were only. I think there's still only like 140 chiropractors for the whole of Scotland, a population of 5 million. So we are really short. So if anyone wants a job, now, believe it or not, I have a very stable practice 13 years later. And my core patient base barely alters. Like, I think I have a patient base of about 1,200 patients. And that is so stable. And despite COVID, I was looking back through the bookings pre-COVID. 75% of the people in my current diary were with me before COVID in the same. If they were Monday at 10 o'clock, they're Monday at 10 o'clock. You know what I mean? They're not the backbones of the practice hasn't changed. But that's been a long education process, both for me to learn to be the chiropractor I am, and also for those people who've had the courage and the temerity to stay the course. None of them regret it. Nobody ever regrets being a 5-year chiropractic patient. They really don't, because their life compared to their friends and their peers is completely different.
Can you talk about how the culture in Scotland has maybe shifted over the last 15 years or 13 years in practice, of how you've continued to adapt to the times, and maybe people in communities function differently? Like, how did you arrive at 150 people in your audience tonight? Like, what's the necessary momentum that you had to create in the minds of the people that come to see you, that would allow you to you know attract this many people to hear your message without you having to advertise and market to everybody everywhere?
So, to be honest, tonight I'm going to speak I'm going to speak at an existing event, and then they're not. So, luckily for me, I'm piggybacking onto a group, but I rely almost entirely on the mechanism of referrals and gratuity. Right from the get-go, that's a real American expression, but I think everybody in the world will understand that. Right from the get-go, I wrote a handwritten card, 5 lines, for every referral. Dear Ben, thank you very much for referring your friend to see me. I will do my best to make sure this is a good referral, and I'm deeply grateful. Thank you very much for that. I used to I still do insert a little business card, in effect, like with a voucher on the back for £10. Please accept £10 off your next appointment. That's about $14 in thanks. And here's a voucher for £10. Anybody in your close friends or family who you think might need chiropractic. And so that just lights that at all the best, yours and best wishes, Donald. I mean, it takes me 30 seconds to do that. That's sent in an envelope, which like my chiropractic assistant writes, and stamps and posts. And not many people this day and age get a handwritten note. Everybody gets an email or a text message reminder or something. It says a handwritten note. That's just a little touch, and it's meaningful, and it creates a gratitude cascade, which is like a nuclear reaction. One atom hits another atom, hits three atoms, hits nine. And when you say thank you to somebody and you arm them with a voucher to give away, they're deadly. They're going to find somebody to use because they're grateful they received gratitude, and they're deadly. And so that's my primary marketing, and also to try and be a really good chiropractor. My one of my values is results. I love great results. I love to see the miracle happening.
Can you get into detail about the experience that people have in your practice, what it's like to be a chiropractor, just so that people could really
Sure.
enter into maybe your mindset when you're taking care of people, the
Sure.
diagnostic approach of how you find subluxations, or just how you adjust people, how you manage a team within your practice? You have associates. Like,
Mhm.
what's the structure from the inside out of your practice?
All of that is true. I have associates and a team, and I have two practices, um, several associates. That number goes up and down depending on people. So let's follow a chiropractor who makes a telephone call into our clinic. It'll be answered by the most amazingly naturally lovely sounding person, young female. But that doesn't have to be that. They just happen to be in our clinic, and they answer the phone like they were going to speak to their favorite grandmother. They empathetically, not sympathetically, empathetically understand the patient's problem, or understand the patient's concerns, should we say, and direct them to a new patient consultation. We do that. It takes about half an hour in my appointment system. I take very much from Stephen Covey. One of his 7 principles of highly effective people is seek first to understand before you're understood. So I take my first consultation very much as me trying to understand them, so that in my report of findings, my second visit, I I can let them know that I've understood them, and that how I see chiropractic can solve their problems. That's very important. They're about to spend a lot of money. I mean, we don't have insurance. Well, we do have insurance, but I don't do insurance. I'm 100% cash. So they're about to spend a lot of dough, and they need to know that they've got a likelihood of success for their problem, regardless of how you see the body. They need to understand that their problem is going to be solved. So seek first to understand. The first half an hour appointment is very much me laying, I suppose, the sort of seeds of chiropractic understanding, and doing a physical exam of sorts. I'll go into more of that in a second. And I do one very quick adjustment. It's not the same adjustment. It could be a pelvic adjustment, or it could be an upper cervical adjustment, or it could be a cranial adjustment, but it's not a full, say, SOT workup, so as to speak. The report of findings, the second part, is I hope that they're going to understand me. I need for them to understand that I've acknowledged, that I've listened to them, that I've understood what their problem is. Once I've done that, I make sure they know that we are the solution. I want to just put a couple of caveats there. Just say somebody comes in with stage 4 renal cancer, and I truly believe sincerely that I can help them. I can't do anything about stage 4 renal cancer. I completely acknowledge that, and I will acknowledge that to them. But I will also hope that they will understand that their unsubluxated version of themselves will do a hell of a lot better through whatever phase of life they're in than their subluxated version. That's a really important thing to understand. I think part of the argument between them, say the mechanists and the vitalists, or the two fringe elements of chiropractic on the outside of each of those, is that the people who treat symptoms can never understand how I would treat, in inverted commas, someone with stage 4 cancer. I don't. I adjust their subluxations, and they seem to do better. And I have a lot of people with terminal disease. It's one of my, I suppose, specialties. Not specialties, but it's somehow I got attracted to people with chronic conditions such as Parkinson's, ALS, multiple sclerosis, and so on. So I have a lot of people where we're managing life-altering conditions. They make great patients because, or practice members, because their life is so fundamentally altered by chiropractic for the good, but they get it. They get the big picture that you're not treating or curing them. Anyway, we have our report of findings. I will offer them a care plan. So in my opinion, the aim of a chiropractic adjustment is to achieve ease. That's a state of ease throughout the body where the brain is coherent with the body. The aim of a care plan is sustained ease, sustained ease. In my opinion, the doctor and the patient walk into the room in the same body. Now, that's a big thing if you're in pre-chiro to understand. I can't cure anybody or even cure ham. Jesus Christ in the Bible cured people and sent them to the Pharisees to be checked. I can't do that. All I can do is help the brain be coherent with the body by adjusting them, and they have to heal. So we need a care plan, which is a plan which is going to take them from their state of poor health or lack of ease or dysfunction or disharmony or anxiety or whatever state they're in to a state of greater ease, harmony, and function at a later date. And we look for acceptance of that plan, and we don't actually begin to adjust them in a constructive manner until they've accepted that. The reason I give them an adjustment on the first visit is, one, I want to see what a small change will do in the interim time. And two, I want them to understand what they're coming in for. I don't want anybody duped into something that they're going to fall out with later. You know, if you don't like the adjustment and it's going to become a problem that every single time you come, we're going to have a massive barrier to get over before we adjust you. I don't want you coming into my office until you're ready for that, until your value system is in line with that. So we set out on a care plan, and a pretty regular adult care plan for me is twice a week for 6 weeks. That's governed by all sorts of things, not least space in my diary is pretty tight. So it's quite difficult to get first phase 1 people in, which is a nice complaint. I'm really happy with that. So they then come for a third visit, which is I will adjust them. I will give them an adjustment. So I grew up in chiropractic in SOT, sacro-occipital technique. For those people who don't know much about chiropractic, it's the guys with the blocks. We have a leather-covered wedge which we put under your pelvis, and we also do things up in the head and stick our fingers in people's mouths and that sort of stuff. And I grew up and I studied SOT to the highest academic level possible. I'm a craniopath, but I've moved away from the technique purity of that, basically because I also have other exposures. You know, I loved Gonstead when I was at Palmer College. I loved upper cervical specific. And over the lifetime experience, I've worked out what I believe it takes to help people achieve a state of ease. And it looks a little bit like SOT, but it's not. So what I've done is I've taken SOT and I've stripped a little bit of it out. I used muscle testing to put you into a box, a category, I suppose. And I do it very quickly, like inside 20 seconds. How? Using muscle testing, just asking questions. And what I'm really looking for is the key into the nervous system. What is the key that I need to open the door to your nervous system? Is it going to start in your cervicals? Is it going to start in your pelvis? Is it going to start in your cranium? Where are we going to start? So I'm just looking for the door. And I love to live my whole life by a saying of a famous Scotsman, actually, called Thomas Carlyle, which is to go as far as you can see. And when you get there, you'll see how to go further. You know, sometimes we're too frightened to start a journey because we can't see the whole journey. But if we can see the horizon, if we were to walk to that horizon, we would see another horizon. So if we can go as far as we can see, when we get there, we'll see how to go farther. And I think that's how I live my whole life. So what I'm looking for is the key to the nervous system, key today. And I ask a series of questions. Are you a category 1, 2, or 3? Are you a descending or a cranial or not? And I'll get an answer, and that's where I start. So if you're cranial, I use a cranial technique called craniofacial dynamics. It's taught here in Oxford in England, but it will be worldwide, I hope, before too long. And I integrate that into SOT. So I might block you, but into that I still do a lot of Thompson. I've incorporated a lot of Thompson technique for pelvic adjusting. I still adjust the spine like I learned at Palmer, the thoracics, lumbars, still side posture to diversify. So I fit all of that into a technique. But in my mind, I'm following a flow chart, which I've developed. I have never written it down. It's just in my head. So, I'm asking 3 questions. Once I found the key, I start there. The next part of the adjustment will be given by the patient, So it's after each point I have, am I going to go left or am I going to go right? Am I going to go from the pelvic to the cranium or whatever? So I follow that. I run 3 benches concurrently. Some people hate that. You're stealing people's money or whatever. They're not paying me for their time. They're paying me for the effect that I can create with their body and their nervous system. So I run 3 beds concurrently in a sort of semi-open plan practice. Once somebody's lying on a set of blocks, I will happily move on to the next room where a waiting patient will be for me. And to be honest, I wouldn't see a third of the people who want to see me if I didn't do that. And I suppose most patients are with me for somewhere between 8 and 12 minutes, although my personal time that I spend exactly with them might be 4 minutes, 5 minutes, not 100%. And that'll be really when I change blocks, do the adjusting, put them in a different, do some CMRT, which is another SOT thing or whatever. So, but that was a journey I had to go through. Actually, I had to go through that journey in my head to understand that, because I started life as a closed room, 1 patient in 20-minute appointments, because that was what my mentor did. I'm now a semi-open plan, 3 at a time at a constant, so we run a fairly fluid diary. At the end of their first 12 adjustments, we will do a review. This is the next time in their life they will be closed room with us starting in a sitting position talking. Why 12 visits? There are several reasons. One, it's a bite-sized chunk that people can psychologically get hold of very easily. They financially can see how that would fit into their lives. But we're a regulated profession in the United Kingdom and in Scotland, so 12 visits has been very defended in our court system as being reasonable. So we have to take that into configuration. I've never seen anybody really get better or cured, let's call that in parentheses, as you would say in America, or inverted commas, as we would say in the UK, unless much less, unless they're a very young child. When I say cured, I mean get to a point where they feel completely at ease in less than about 16 to 24 visits. So I let them know right at the beginning of care that they should have a relationship with me for multiple months as their body heals, and that's what we would like them to do, and that we will sell it to them in bite-sized chunks of 12 visits at a time. And that's generally our aim. I would like to say it's 100% perfect and it never fails, but I do get some people who drop out halfway through phase 1 after 4 or 5 visits, and that's usually not to do with results, but to do with what I would describe as values dissonance. Their values with what they're spending and what they're receiving and their perceived results aren't there. Their patience is not there. They wanted something that was going to change their life in 30 seconds, and I usually say to people like that, this town is about 12 churches in, and I think you should start there if you want, if you want that level of speed and change. So that, we do a review, that's closed room, and in that review, we get a second agreement, and the agreement's going to be either stay the same, we'll see you more often, or we'll see you less often, or we'll take a break. I love Bill Esteb's communication. One of Bill Esteb's great things is love your patients, but don't love them too much that you can't let them go so they won't come back. If it's option number 4, we're going to take a break, I'm really delighted you've come this far. We're always here. You're welcome back. If you are doing amazingly, we might see you less often. So if you're coming twice a week, we might go down to once a week. If you're coming once a week, we might go to once every 2 weeks. And it may be we stay the same because actually their body's still taking time to heal and figure things out. So we achieve that agreement. And I'm really happy that that agreement has to be in line with their values and what they want out of their, they're the customer as well as the patient. And so that must be in their values must be in line with the money they're about to spend. Yeah, because it's all cash here. Our competition, as in the state-funded health service, is free. So they're coming out of a ubiquitous wraparound medical system to something which costs money, and it's a choice, So, but I love it. I don't want it any other way. If they offered me a place in their state-funded, no values there. Does that help?
Yeah, thank you so much for that. Can we shift the focus now towards the Scotland Chiropractic College, your involvement, also your contributions with the book Wisdom of 33, and also your facilitator, coaching, consulting company? Can you kind of just touch on those?
Sure, no problem. So I believe that every chiropractor should get a coach. And I think they should get one really quickly after graduation, if they're able to get one before graduation. That America is loaded with coaching companies. Be very careful. Choose your coaching company carefully. They're expensive, but your coaching company should at least help you be successful very quickly. I coach people, and I reckon that as a result of coaching with me, you should probably within about 3 months be bringing in about 3 times what I cost you extra over what you paid me. So at the worst, you should be 2 times better off than you pay me. Okay, so that's my coaching. I'm just evolving my coaching at the moment. I was coaching a lot of, so my sort of dream place was coaching people who are struggling with a big idea. So in the United Kingdom and in Europe, very few of our colleges here are in a traditional BJ-centric, DD-centric big idea chiropractic. That's subluxation based. But a lot of people want to be that. That's what that's where their mentors lived, and but they really struggle to bridge their education with the big idea, the way they want to live. They don't know how to set up their adjusting style. They don't know how to set up their programs. They don't know how to set up their systems. And so that, I suppose, is my sort of superpower within the coaching world. I am probably not the sort of coach that's going to take somebody from 200 to 300 a week. Okay. I'm the one who's going to take you from 50 to 150, I'm the one who's going to bridge that gap between, or I'm one of those people. And I like that because it's a gap that I crossed myself, so I understand it. I can empathize with both sides of the game, and I like it because it's very desperately needed. When we get to that point with my coaching, I actually help you find somebody else who I think will take you the rest of the way. That's my coaching, and I do that through a company called Veritas Curat, which means the Veritas Curat is Latin for the truth cures. It's just a brand. I also teach a lot of neurology seminars now, which I love. It's my sort of, it's neurology, and it's linked to chiropractic philosophy. Some famous people say we shouldn't tie in philosophy and science. I think it's absolute nonsense. I think our philosophy drives our science and vice versa. And I completely love the link between the two. I live in a very philosophical headspace, and I live in a very scientific headspace, and I can't decompartmentalize them. So I teach those I suppose that some people might call them technique seminars. I just call them a chiropractic, chiropractic. We do teach technique. We teach anatomy, physiology, neurology, and all about how it links back to the brain. At the moment, just in the UK, but I'm going to do some in Europe later on this year, and who knows where we'll go from there. The Scotland College, I am really a founder, which means that I was a founding donor, not a founder in as much as I'm one of the founding fathers who put my name on a script. The absolute founder is a very good friend of mine called Ross MacDonald, a man who I coached with for 5 years, a man who really helped me cross that from being, although I went to Palma, from being, let's say, philosophically aware, but mechanistically arranged in terms of how I adjusted and treated people, to being the philosophical special forces I am now. Anyway, Ross had this big idea. I think it's been about 12 or 13 years in coming, for a college in Scotland, because in the UK, the academic direction that chiropractic has been taking has been the so-called evidence-based. And that really puts us in direct competition with physiotherapists and osteopaths in this country. DOs, very different to American DOs, actually. DOs here are more manipulative, should we say, probably like highly trained physiotherapists. Anyway, if we go down that road, in my opinion, as a profession, we'll be dead pretty quickly, because there'll be no reason for us to exist separately from them in the end. So Ross had this big idea, and it's very close to fruition. They have a campus in Edinburgh. It's beautiful. Edinburgh is a beautiful city. And they're ready to open. They have a university to back and accredit it, which is very important in this country. I mean, Palma self-accredited. I think Life self-accredits, but some of the smaller colleges tie in with a bigger university institution. We produced a book called The Wisdom of 33. Really, it was my brainchild, and I suppose I did a lot of the legwork in putting it together. But we got 33 chapters, or wisdoms as we call them, and they were written by 66 different entities from around the world, chiropractors and chiropractic advocates. And we've got some really big names in chiropractic communication, such as Martin Harvey in Australia, and we've got some, philosophical freedom fighters like Billy DeMoss, and we've also got some philosophical, culturally, impressive people like James Chestnut, and other people like that. But what we chose was a smattering of ages, countries, success levels. There's about 5 chiropractic advocates in there. Brandy McDonald is one from Canada. She's amazing. And a couple of others from around the world. And each one was tasked to write 1,500 words. And the reason we chose 1,500 words is that it's about a 10 to 15 minute sit down read per day. So you could then, therefore, you didn't have to get bogged down. And if you didn't like my bit, for example, you could move on to the next, and perhaps you would see wisdom in David Serio or so on. And we produced that, and we've sold about 2,000 of those. I think we raised about $30,000. I won't lie. Our marketing plan always revolved around us going to seminars such as Parker and Mile High and CalJam and all these things, but I don't want to have a needle stuck in my arm, so I can't come into America at the moment to go and sell them. I can't go to Australia. So we're working on alternative plans to get the book sold out there. I don't want people to buy it just because the money is going to go to the Scotland College to produce a beautiful vitalistic college. It's just about to open. I want people to buy it also because it's really quite good. If you are 66 of the brightest people in chiropractic, and I must admit, Ben, I didn't know you then, so I didn't ask you, but 66 people I knew from around the world, to give us 1,500 words of their wisdom. And what I asked for was, if I gave you the opportunity to give just 1,500 words of something that you would like to give the chiropractic profession, what would it be? We've got some absolute masterpieces in there, talking about salutogenic practice, talking about principled practice, talking about success, talking about pediatrics, talking about, you name it, talking about philosophy, talking about be, do, have principles, and so on. So it's it's called The Wisdom of 33. It's available on Amazon at a massive discount at the moment. That's Amazon's discount, not mine. I'd rather you bought it from me at a seminar one day, because with the college will get most of the money. I paid the initial printing costs, so most of the money, if I sell it at a seminar, goes to the college. Whereas if it goes through Amazon, yeah, they take a big cut. But it's a really good book. And so my role in the college is that the college should open either in January 2023 or the following summer. And everything is in place except the rubber stamp from our British General Chiropractic Council. It's the sheriff of chiropractic here in the UK. So it's ready to go. I think they've got a waiting list of people, so they're going to be able to take high caliber people in. Worldwide costs, it's going to be really cheap, actually. I think it's going to be about $12,000 a year for 4 years. So I think you're going to be able to get through in $48,000 of tuition fees. Edinburgh is the most beautiful city you've ever seen or never seen. And culturally, it's full of vibrant culture. So I think it's going to be a true. They've just had the principal, which is a sort of British president version. It has just come from Life West. It's Dr. Ankur Tayal. He's a Canadian guy, super guy. You might know him. So everything's in place now. They've got their anatomy, physiology. They've got the course. It just needs the starting gun to fire to get people in. And that'll mean that in Europe, we really have 3 vitalistic colleges. That'll be Scotland, the McTimoney College, which is a very flexible college down in southern England and Oxford, actually. And then there's the Barcelona College of Chiropractic in Spain. And there's a new one starting up in Holland, actually, in Amsterdam, or near Amsterdam. So that'll be amazing too. So, the vitalistic community is strong. It's growing. It's vibrant. We're serving, millions of people. And I think the problem is we're just a little bit too busy to get involved in the politics too deeply, which is one of our Achilles heels, actually.
Well, hey, I want to thank you so much for your time, your energy, and yeah, I can't wait to just continue our conversation into the future as far as how we can support each other and just support the students. If I had more time with you here, I was going to ask, maybe you could give me in 30 to 45 seconds your strategic plan if we're going not into battle but into new territory with trying to promote the Scotland college to high school or college students.
Sorry about my dogs there.
Yeah. Just really succinctly, how can we meet the students?
Scotland is a pioneering new college in one of Europe's oldest capital cities. It's going to be cheap or expensive, very cheap for Americans, it's average for UK price. So cost-wise, it's very cost-effective. The level of tuition and academic will be second to none. They've really gone out and they've recruited the absolute top people they can find around the world. So, every school has its difficulty to start off with, but in time, it's going to be a state-of-the-art university, probably with almost certainly with a research basis, like the New Zealand College, based in very sound chiropractic principled research.